So, after weeks of planning for my daughter to be a flower girl in my sister's wedding, she decides that now it's not the right time for that. Stick around to the end because when I reveal the reason this flower girl's no longer the flower girl, well, let me just say, it's disgusting. I'm gonna be blunt. I'm 28, female, and have a sister, 26, who got married last month. My sister has always been one of those people that has to have everything perfect, to the point sometimes it's hard to be around her. But she was my little sister, and I have no other siblings, so I always made excuses when she'd hurt me when I was doing things right in her eyes. I was kinda nervous when she asked me and my daughter to be bridesmaid in February, because I knew she was gonna be a massive bridezilla. Over the last few months, we had to practice multiple dances, pay for very expensive dresses, and put up with her tantrums. I told her from the start, if she was in any way nasty to my child, I would not stand for it. She assured me that she'd never be nasty towards her, quote, favorite person in the world. Well, now her husband's little cousin, who's about 8, started coming to dance practice with her mom, and my sister started to ask her to do little things like show my daughter how to throw the petals. I honestly thought she'd make them both flower girls for a while, but when she started to make my daughter sit out and have the little girl do her poem, I knew what was going to happen, but I prayed I was wrong. I invited her out to coffee a few weeks before the wedding and asked her what's going on. She told me she was glad I brought it up because she was looking for the right time. Apparently, my 4-year-old wasn't doing everything right, and she was afraid that she was gonna, quote, mess up her version by saying the wrong thing or just not doing the dance right on the day. I told her she was doing a pretty good job and everyone was always praising her. Sister giggled and said that it's not their day, now is it? So it's not up to us what's good enough for her wedding. I asked her straight up if she thought her niece wasn't good enough to be in her wedding. She replied with not as something big as a flower girl, but to attend. I asked her how I was going to break it to my daughter, who's excited about being in the wedding. She just told me, figure it out. I told her I'd give her a day to rethink her decision. If not, then we're not attending and speaking to her ever again. Before I left. 2 days passed and I could not put off any longer, so I broke the news to my child. Even though I tried my hardest to sugarcoat it as much as possible, the news still broke her heart. She cried herself to sleep, and so did I. Well, after a week when I was a no-show for anything, my sister started to panic, and started to get everyone to talk to me, even dropping off gifts for my daughter. When I told them why, a good number of our family members, including the bridesmaids, dropped out. We ended up going for a few weeks with no phones. When we came back, my sister had sent me multiple letters and emails apologizing. Her in-laws and husband have called me an a-hole for doing what I did. A couple quick little edits. My brother-in-law saw this post and told my sister, who cried reading all your comments. How do I know? Because they showed up at my job, knowing I would not want to start a scene. They begged me to delete the post before the people that they knew saw it, and just kept apologizing. Finally, my sister said she might be pregnant. I told her even if she is, pregnancy doesn't just wash away all the crappy things she's done, and I hope her husband's siblings never treat her child the way she treated mine, because I don't plan to be a part of her life. She burst into tears, saying she was sorry and she loves my daughter. I told her to leave before I called security, and her husband tried to talk to me alone because, quote, I was making her upset. And everyone was cold towards them because of me. I told them no. Everyone was cold because Cinderella and Prince Charming forgot that after treating everyone like crap, no one wanted to be in their little happily ever after. They didn't like my mocking tone and raised their voice at me. My boss, who knows the situation and has a 5-year-old herself, told them to leave, so she's on my side. My sister's mother-in-law reached out to my parents asking for everyone to meet. On neutral terms, of course, so we can all work out our differences. I'm gonna go to this dinner party because I want to hear their story and officially tell them to leave me alone. I'll update you guys. What's up, guys? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you're having an amazing day. So there was an update for this story that OP posted, and it was after the original post dinner party. Let's hop into that now. Go ahead and click that subscribe button if you're not subscribed yet, if you like these type of stories, because there's updates that come out later on that you don't want to miss. Here's your update. My sister's photographer saw this post and reached out to me on here. She knew my full name and she gave me her Instagram to confirm. This gets deeper than my daughter not dancing right. Apparently, she overheard my sister's mother-in-law and aunt-in-law talking in the bathroom. They used slurs against my daughter and husband. They called me the black man's beep. The photographer said that they were both drunk. But the brother-in-law also made jokes around my sister earlier in the day, which she smiled at. She also thinks my family members heard it, and that's the reason they dropped out. So yeah, my daughter wasn't Flower Girl because unlike me, her aunt, or the other Flower Girl, she doesn't have blue eyes and blonde hair. If you're reading this, Sarah and Frank, duck you. Duck you and your family. My child's too good to be around trash like you. Stay the heck away from us. If anyone in my family knew the real story and did not tell me, man, forget about you too. So I do want to point out one comment that I came across, because without this whole story would not have been revealed how bad the situation actually was. So many points to the photographer. This story just keeps getting worse and worse, and I'm glad it had such a hopeful ending. Comment 2 says, mainly points to the photographer because if she had not come forward, it sounds like no one else would have either. Like, it sounds like many people from her family knew what happened and was offended enough to drop out of the wedding, but not tell OP? What the heck? Guys, let me know what you would do if you were in this situation. Drop your thoughts down below, and we're going to turn our attention to story number 2. Am I the a-hole for asking my husband to stay with his family while he's unemployed? I hope you guys are having a great day. Let's get into story 2. My husband, who's 32, and I have been married for just over a year now, and things could not be rockier. I have a good job and make decent amount of money, whereas my husband makes just not as much as me. Due to this, and the fact that he was still living with his parents when we got married, we decided he would move in with me, and I would continue to pay the rent and bills as long as he put money towards other things we might need as a couple. My name is the only one on the lease. However, once we got married, he started to cut down on his work hours without saying anything first. He gave the explanation that I made plenty of money for the both of us, so he could just work part-time and do other work around the house while I was the main breadwinner. I was fine with this. A little upset that he just assumed this would be okay, but I didn't say anything as this felt fair. He did do some work around the house initially, but spent the majority of his time going out to the bar, playing video games, to the point where I was the one both working and doing the cooking, cleaning, and other household chores. My husband told me he was laid off 2 months ago for reasons out of his control. I assumed this time that he would begin job hunting, and I began to pay for everything. While I do earn a decent amount of money, it's not to the point where I can pay for rent, bills, groceries, insurance, contribute to emergency savings, and finance the lifestyle my husband started indulging in. I began paying for his nights out, subbing him money for trips to look for work, all while I was under the assumption he would be searching for a new job, at least finance his hobbies with. About a week ago, I asked him how the job hunt was going, and he told me he did not feel like it was worth it. He said to me that he was comfortable with what he had and what we have now, and I wasn't happy to say the least. Well, I confronted him about it and how I was doing everything to finance and take care of the household, while he sat around playing video games. I was being a jerk here, I'll admit it. And during this argument, he let slip that he actually quit and never was looking for another job. I was furious. Furious that he lied to me and told him I didn't want him in my home right now. Well, fast forward to now. My in-laws are understanding to an extent, but are calling me an a-hole for not wanting him to come back home until he finds a job. I've seen my husband in this time, but never in our home, always out somewhere. I no longer pay for everything, and his attitude towards me is making me question our entire relationship. He's calling me an a-hole for doing this to him, and I'm beginning to think he's right. Am I an a-hole? What's up, guys? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you're having a great day. There is an update for this story, so we're going to jump in that now. Go ahead and smash that like button if you're enjoying so far. Here's your update. As I mentioned on here, my husband and I had an argument which resulted in me kicking him out of our home. Since then, the dust has been able to settle, and we've been able to work through our problems. I would also like to clear up here that we're both men, as some people assumed I was a woman. My husband and I met up for coffee in public a couple days after I made my original post. He's quite the avid internet reader. In hindsight, I probably should have assumed he would see this, but things get slippery on my mind sometimes. He apologized a lot, actually, about everything. After having my husband back for a while, his parents began to really tear him up about his habits and behavior, and that he'd have to work hard if he wanted to keep our marriage together. We're currently seeing a couples therapist to work through the remainder of our issues, to make sure that we're 100% on the same page before we move in together again. My husband also started working again, and moved into his own apartment after working through some personal problems. And we're almost to the point where we're back to where we were. We talk every day, go on dates, etc. Aside from sharing a space, we're comfortable with this. I'd like to admit here that I definitely was not good as a partner as I could have been. My husband's given me permission to share this with you, all that he's been struggling with. His mental health, it's been a lot in his time of unemployment, and I feel ashamed that I was too busy with my work to notice. I just didn't know it all. This is not an excuse for mine, nor his actions at all, by the way. We're just communicating, and he's finally reaching out for the support he feels he needs. I'm happy with where we are, and I feel like he's not hiding his true feelings and intentions from me anymore, which I kick myself every day for, making him feel that way. Right now, we're not planning on changing our financial arrangement or involving a lawyer like some of you suggested, as I don't want to cause myself or him any more stress. Some of you may disagree, as his parents have been gunning me to change the financial information, or just get rid of everything he has access to in case he attempts this again, but I trust him. This man is the love of my life, and if I can't believe what he tells me is true, then I don't see a point of staying with him. Once again, thank you for your support. This is my final and only update. Alright, so I found 5 bullet proofs that show or say why OP's not the a-hole in this situation, so I'll read it now. Not the a-hole. Number 1, he cut down his hours without discussing it. Number 2, he quit his job and lied about it. Number 3, he spends his time partying with his buddies and having you foot the bill. Number 4, he lied about job searching. And number 5, he won't keep up the household. So guys, are these 5 reasonings enough justification for what OP did? Let me know your thoughts on it. Drop them down below, as I would love to hear them. And we're going to look at the final story. Am I the a-hole for getting someone fired because they pretended to know a language? Let's see. I'm 27 and I decided to apply for my dream job. I've met all the criteria, and one of them was to be proficient in my native language, which is Russian. Which I am, since I've grown up in the country speaking and writing it, and have finished school and university, where obviously all the subjects are taught in Russian, except English and French-German language classes. I ended up securing the interview with this place and needed to demonstrate the knowledge of Russian. So the person who did the interview started asking me questions in Russian. However, I could barely understand her. Not only the accent made it incredibly difficult, but the fact that she just could not build a sentence, but also used incorrect forms of the words and the pronunciation was just totally wrong. In short, it sounded as if she was randomly putting the words in Google Translate and was trying to repeat them over. I've answered all her questions. However, I've also noticed she barely made any notes. I decided to let it pass and wait for the verdict. After about 3 months of chasing and silence, I got an email saying I was not successful, and the reason was that they believed my knowledge of Russian language was poor and insufficient for the job and not up to their standards, according to the interviewer. Of course, I was confused, since the lady who interviewed me could barely speak the language herself. So I've decided to leave feedback about my experience on the job site, which was made to share info about the working job and the interview process. My review received a fair amount of traction, and last week, Monday, I ended up getting a call from the higher-ups, who listened to my feedback and opened the investigation. On Friday, I found out the lady who interviewed me was dismissed. She and her friends were messaging me on social media, calling me an a-hole, because this job was her only source of income and was struggling. Well, I now feel guilty about this, and feel like I was just an a-hole for writing about my experience. So guys, am I the a-hole? Alright, so we'll keep this one short and sweet. This is the main reasoning that everyone agreed on in the comment section as to why OP's not the a-hole. Here it is. Not the a-hole. She's scamming her company by pretending to speak a language that she has minimal fluency in. Imagine how many other people she's turned down for jobs. That's a very interesting point, and I have to agree with that one. But let me know your thoughts. It's okay to disagree with me. Just tell me in the comments so we can talk about it. Guys, that's all the stories I have for this video. Thank you so much for tuning in, and if you want to, consider subscribing or hitting that like button. I hope you have an amazing day, and remember, it's cool to be kind.